What the hell is happening to the US? Unemployment is at a whole new low. And although food and housing prices have gone up, people are struggling way more, which I don't fully understand when unemployment is so low. Maybe I'm pinning way too much on unemployment. Times are tough. And I know it's cause things are bad. But which are the specific things that are bad? What does the younger generation need to fix with the help of the current working generation? Answered. A number of reasons seem to be at fault for this. There are many factors to blame, but the major ones seem to be a tank in productivity from COVID just catching up to us, poor economic decisions from years ago, a corrupt healthcare industry, education college becoming less useful for finding a high-paying job, a stagnation in wages, an increase in cost of living, unemployment being an unreliable statistic, extreme housing prices, large corporations, capitalism, and more. But most of all, inflation. Employment doesn't necessarily equal livable wage. Unemployment may be low, but this doesn't mean people are earning enough to cover costs of food, housing, insurance, gas, internet, etc. I have worked at the same job for over 10 years. 3 of those years I didn't get an annual raise. This year was one of them, so I'm eating up all the inflation because of not getting a raise. I made pretty good money. Had money left over to buy things and overpay bills. That's all gone now. It's pretty tight now. With inflation taken into account, I make 0.50 more now an hour than I started at a bit over 10 years ago. If you ever wonder how a guy with 10 or 15 years in can make what a new hire makes just out of school, that's how. Politician: we created a lot of jobs. American one: no. I have 3 of them. Wages are also historically low compared to cost of living. College graduates with good degrees and good paying jobs not able to afford housing, rent, car payments, student loans, other living costs, etc. Makes no sense how people can be making $60,000, $100K and be struggling this much. Pretty much what's going on. Wages are ridiculously low. Rent and food ridiculously high. Those low unemployment numbers ignore the severely underemployed or people who are no longer applying to a certain amount of places weekly. There are different methods to count unemployment. The officials change which method they use depending on how they want to manipulate the public. Rent is murdering everyone right now because we aren't making more money to combat the rise in housing. What do you think would happen to the US if we suddenly became isolated? No imports could reach our soil. 60 years ago, the US produced 50 of the world's goods. Unions made sure people made a living wage. Today we produce about 17. And there are places in this country where most of the jobs are in the service industry. And for some reason a lot of people don't believe service workers should get paid enough to make a living. Do the jobs pay well? Checks notes number. In most developed countries, even a shitty job can get you a roof, a bed and 3 meals a day with some left over at 40 hours a week. Not so with many American jobs, and even many part-time jobs require availability every day, which doesn't allow combining them and are all most businesses offer. We need to restructure society and reevaluate necessities. Affordable housing, medical, clean food and water, good education and good living environment. All we need is a slight technological revolution as far as cheap labor. AI can help as it improves with time. It's essential that we have a clean, sustainable and inexpensive power supply. It is all basic stuff we already know, we just have to have a higher standard for society. I wish we would stop using employment and start using the metric percentage of Americans earning a living wage for 40 hours per week. Obviously much harder to calculate. But some single mom working 3 jobs to feed her kids, counting as employed, is not a fucking victory lap. Workforce participation shrank during the lockdowns and mask mandates. A lot of people that were on the fence about continuing to work just stopped working. Maybe some retired. Maybe some just decided to go one income and rely on their spouse. Kids decided to focus on school. Whatever. But unemployment is only those who are seeking work, not those that have decided not to work anymore. People need money to survive. Most families have no savings or investment. Unemployment is low cause if you don't have done kind of income. You become homeless and starve. It's why businesses have been able to pay such low wages besides buying politicians to dictate policies that benefit them. They know families need a shit-paying job regardless and no real threat of strikes of unionizing, etc. But times are changing. Just not fast enough. The unemployment argument is garbage the media feeds you. Unemployment may be at an all-time high, but that doesn't mean there are quality jobs or a livable wage. It just means people have to take on additional jobs and work longer hours to try to make up for the shitty pay. It's something the rich say to defend the status quo. United States of corporations treading along as intended. Corporations are reaping massive profits using the inflation as a ruse to keep prices high. Rent is skyrocketing even in rural areas. Wages are stagnant since stockholders' execs take precedent. Do not get sick here because you will drown in medical debt. Unemployment rates, no matter which flavor of politician is in office, are manipulated. They have to be taken with a grain of salt. Inflation is way up, which is causing everything to become more expensive. To fix the big issue, the government is going to have to spend within the limit of its revenues instead of borrowing and printing money out of thin air. But of course it's not going to do that because it's easier to kick the can down the road and only deal with it once it becomes an emergency. The ruling oligarchs are pushing culture wars so hard so people barely notice how they continue to enrich themselves on our backs. And it's working. Americans are pathetic sheep. I've noticed a lot more homeless people in my neighborhood. Most of them appear to be on fentanyl too. It's a sad sight to see. They all look like the living dead. 60 years of wage suppression has finally caught up. We have chosen to tolerate slave wages and homelessness, and it is costing us. The government is lying to you about everything. Accept it. The sooner you accept it, the more it makes sense. Greed. Greed is the cause of nearly every one of our major problems. Low unemployment is actually bad. This means more people within a household need to work in order to pay for everyday items. I work 60 hours a week and can barely pay rent and afford food. I do not live extravagantly. I am so tired. I can't afford repairs on my car. I have no time for doctor appointments and I need to see a dentist urgently. I am so tired. You will need massive strikes and solidarity. Probably you'll need a revolt. The bosses have squeezed everything out of Americans there is to squeeze. The only path left is the desperate revolting. I would suggest to you that you organize and channel this desperation before it turns truly destructive. Did you miss the last 20 years or something? The entire world has been spiraling since 9/11.